And as U.S. intelligence officials investigate the origins of the coronavirus, new reporting suggests China may have shielded information from the disease from the rest of the world. The Australian Daily Telegraph reports it has seen a dossier from the Five Eyes on China's role in the pandemic. Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance between the U.S., the U.K., Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis is following this latest development, and she joins us now to talk about this. So, Olivia, when I saw this reporting, it sort of certainly opened my eyes. What more do we know about this document?
Right, Vlad and Marie, it's great to be with you. So we're still working on getting a look at this document for ourselves, but what the Australian media is reporting about it is that it's a 15-page document compiled by this intelligence sharing alliance that you just described, and it lays out some pretty significant things about China's early steps in the pandemic. It essentially says that they deliberately either destroyed or suppressed information that was crucial to early response, and they lay that out in three categories. One, that Chinese authorities silenced or disappeared medical officials who were speaking out in the early days of the virus. Two, that they may have destroyed evidence that had to do with its genetic sequencing in labs, and that it bleached the sort of wet market stalls that Chinese authorities said themselves were the site of origin of the virus. And three, that they have been refusing to provide live samples of the virus thus far, something that might be key to understanding its sort of earliest days and might be helpful in devising a vaccine or other remedies. What it doesn't say, as far as the media reports show us, is that there's a conclusion by any of the intelligence agencies as to where it originated. So the wet market theory or the lab theory, which we know are sort of opposed to one another. It does say that Australian intelligence agencies are sort of tending toward the wet market theory. There's going to be a 5% chance, they say, that it was not that it did not originate there, whereas you have certainly heard policymakers in the United States saying, well, the evidence is pretty significant that this virus actually originated in a lab in Wuhan.
So when you talk about those two theories, the wet market and the lab, are those the two theories that U.S. intelligence say that they have evidence at least pointing to one of the two? And if that's the case, why is that significant?
Yes. So I spoke with a senior intelligence official on Friday who told me that there was evidence in support of both theories. Now, why is that different than what the intelligence community said last week in an on-the-record statement? That statement essentially said, we are rigorously examining intelligence and information as it comes in with both of these two theories in mind. What this official told me is that there's actually affirmative evidence in support of both, or each, if you want to think of it that way. It's a little bit of tea leaf reading, but it suggests to me that there is something positive in each category that the intelligence community is exploring. One thing to note, and I will always emphasize the unknowns as well as the knowns. You know, I've spoken to a number of intelligence community current and former officials who say that there may never be a smoking gun. We may never have the 100% answer to this question. We may never have the definitive bit of information that says this definitively originated in the wet market or this definitively originated in a lab.
So, Olivia, China's state broadcaster said Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's assessment that the virus started in a lab is, quote, insane. Here's what Pompeo said yesterday on China's response.
We can confirm that the Chinese Communist Party did all that it could to make sure that the world didn't learn in a timely fashion about what was taking place. There's lots of evidence of that. Some of it you can see in public, right? We've seen announcements. We've seen the fact that they kicked journalists out. We saw the fact that those who were trying to report on this, medical professionals inside of China, were silenced. They shut down reporting, all the kind of things that authoritarian regimes do.
So, Olivia, what are your sources telling you about Pompeo's assessment, and what are you hearing about potential retaliation against China?
Right. So there have definitely been rumblings at the top levels of this administration about eventual retaliation against China for its early handling of the virus. It's unclear what form that may take if it does come to pass. The administration is said to be considering legal repercussions, economic, diplomatic, or a combination of all of those things. What's going to be essential is whether the United States can make a case that that is merited, again, that this was willful mishandling by the Chinese, whether it can get allies on its side in support of those kinds of measures, and whether those measures don't end up in themselves being more damaging than the situation that we find ourselves in right now. You have to remember that this is a very interconnected economy. China's economy is massive, so anything that we do to hurt them can also hurt us. But again, these are steps that policymakers of this administration have made clear they want to take. There's certainly been, as you just heard Pompeo there, a rhetorical lashing of China's handling that's been going on for weeks, if not months now.
So in the meantime, as you know, the president has been taking some criticism for the way the coronavirus was handled here. He has repeatedly reminded people of the travel ban that he put in place in January, but there has been some discussion about what he knew and when, and whether or not his administration alerted him to the danger of the coronavirus that was on its way. It probably had already been here in this country. Now the president says that a report is going to be released about what he knew in January. What do we know so far?
That's right. Well, our reporting on this thus far has been that the intelligence community was warning about the outbreak in China as early as January, and that frequency and in urgency throughout February and into March. You know, they became daily and they became more shrill. What we don't really know is how much they connected the dots. So what the president said yesterday was, in a tweet, was that, it was of no real import, that the intelligence agencies, didn't really spell it out for him. They didn't make it seem like this pandemic was a big deal. We don't know that. We won't know that until the administration opts to release publicly some of the earliest reporting that it was getting from the intelligence community. Those PDBs that, may or may not have predated that January 23rd report that the president said he received. Obviously, there are a lot of congressional overseers who want all of the sort of archives of this opened up and released to the public. But so we'll see what the president's report, as he foreshadowed, the intelligence community's report, as the president foreshadowed would be forthcoming today, actually lays out about this. He seems to be making the case that, yes, he was told that something was happening in China. There was an outbreak of some sort, but that it wasn't necessarily, we need to raise the alarm. We need to start making preparations here in the United States. We will see, I'm sure, as all of this gets reconstructed, just what the substance of those warnings were and whether policymakers should have connected some of those dots themselves about, well, listen, if this is spreading and there's an 11 million person lockdown in China, maybe we need to be taking some precautionary steps ourselves.
Yeah, it's a good point, Olivia. The president says in that tweet that the intelligence officials that he briefed him only spoke of the virus in a very non-threatening, matter-of-fact manner, given that, as you point out, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people who had already succumbed to the coronavirus in China. That does seem dubious, but as you say, we'll have to see once we get more details on that. But yeah, a lot of people have sort of raised their eyebrows to the president's claims there about the intelligence assessment. Olivia Gazis, always great to talk to you. Glad you're doing well. Thank you very much for your reporting. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Vlad and Anne-Marie.